The phone slipped from my mother's hand before she could finish her sentence. All I heard was one broken whisper, "Don't come here. They already know I called you." Then the line went dead. I froze in the middle of my office, staring at my screen while my heart pounded harder with every second. My mother had spent her whole life hiding her pain. She never asked anyone for help. If she had called me like that, something terrible had already happened. I grabbed my keys and drove straight toward the small town where I grew up, not knowing that the man waiting there had already destroyed my father once, and now he was coming after the rest of my family. When I reached our old house, the front gate was hanging open. My mother's flower pots were smashed across the yard, and someone had painted one ugly word across the front door. Liars. My mother was sitting quietly inside, holding a towel against a cut on her arm. She forced a weak smile and said, "I'm fine." I knew she wasn't. Before I could ask another question, a black SUV stopped outside. A well-dressed man stepped out with two lawyers behind him. He looked around our property as if he already owned it. Then he looked straight at me and smiled. "You must be Daniel," he said calmly. "Your father should have taught you something. Never stand in my way." I wanted to throw him out myself, but my mother grabbed my wrist so tightly that I stopped. I had never seen fear in her eyes until that moment. The man handed me a thick envelope. Inside were legal papers claiming my late father had signed away our family land years before he died. It made no sense. My father had fought his whole life to protect this place. He would never have sold it without telling us. The man leaned closer and lowered his voice. "The court believes documents," he whispered. "Not family stories." Then he walked away as if the fight was already over. After they left, my mother finally broke down. Between tears, she admitted something she had hidden for 12 years. A week before my father died, he told her that someone inside his own business had betrayed him. He said if anything happened to him, the truth would be hidden somewhere no one would ever think to look. But before he could explain more, he died in what everyone believed was an accident. My mother had buried that secret because she was terrified the same people would come after me. She looked at me with shaking hands and whispered, "I think they're back because they're afraid you'll find what your father left behind." That night I couldn't sleep. I searched through every box in the attic, hoping for anything that could prove those papers were fake. Hours passed with nothing but old photographs, dusty tools, and faded letters. Just as I was about to give up, I noticed one picture of my father standing beside our old tractor. Something looked strange. On the back of the photo, hidden under layers of tape, he had written only one sentence in tiny handwriting. "If they ever come for this house, don't trust the papers. Find the watch." Viral line. They thought they had buried my father's truth with him. He never wore expensive jewelry, so the message made no sense at first. Then I remembered the old pocket watch my father carried every single day. After he died, it disappeared before we could collect his personal things. The next morning, I visited the retired sheriff who had handled my father's accident. He looked nervous the moment I mentioned the watch. After a long silence, he admitted that several pieces of evidence had gone missing from the evidence locker years ago, including that watch. Before I left, he quietly handed me a copy of an old inventory report he had secretly kept. One name on the report matched the man who had just threatened my family. Sometimes the smallest missing item carries the biggest truth. I hired a lawyer who believed our story after reading the old records. While digging through company files, we found something even stranger. The signatures on the land transfer papers had been made weeks after my father was already in the hospital, heavily sedated and unable to sign anything. Someone had copied his handwriting. At the same time, an old mechanic contacted me after seeing my name in the local newspaper. He claimed my father's fatal accident had never been an accident. He had repaired the truck only days before the crash and remembered finding the brake line deliberately cut. The mechanic had stayed silent because he was threatened with losing everything. Now he was ready to testify. The man who had laughed at us was beginning to lose control. The court hearings became a battlefield. The villain arrived with expensive lawyers, fake confidence, and witnesses who repeated the same rehearsed story. They tried to paint my father as a desperate businessman who willingly sold his land. Then our lawyer presented the inventory report, the hospital records, and the mechanic's sworn testimony. The courtroom became silent. The judge ordered a forensic examination of every disputed document. Days later, the experts confirmed multiple signatures had been forged. That single report destroyed years of carefully planned lies. A lie can survive for years, but one verified fact can end it in a single day. Just when we thought the case was over, another surprise appeared. One of the former accountants from my father's company came forward. He had secretly copied financial records before resigning years earlier. Those files showed millions of dollars had been stolen from the company through fake contracts. The money had been moved into businesses controlled by the same man now trying to steal our land. He hadn't destroyed my father's life because of a personal fight. He had done it because my father discovered the fraud and refused to stay quiet. The hidden files connected every betrayal into one complete picture. The criminal investigation moved quickly after that. Police searched offices, seized computers, and questioned everyone involved. Several former employees admitted they had been forced to sign false statements years earlier. The pocket watch finally turned up inside a forgotten storage box, collected during the investigation. Hidden inside its back cover was a tiny memory card. My father had recorded copies of company documents, voice recordings, and photos proving he knew exactly who was stealing from the business before his death. He had hidden the evidence where no one would think to look, hoping one day someone in the family would find it. The final court hearing lasted less than 2 hours. The forged land transfer was declared invalid. Our family property was returned to us. The company was ordered to pay damages for the fraud and years of financial harm. The man who once smiled at me across the courtroom was led away in handcuffs to face criminal charges for fraud, forgery, witness intimidation, and conspiracy. He looked at me one last time, but this time he couldn't smile. He finally understood that power built on lies always collapses. A few months later, my mother planted new flowers where the broken pots had once been. We repaired the old gate instead of replacing it because my father had built it with his own hands. His name was finally cleared, and the town that once doubted him began telling the truth about the man he really was. I stood beside his grave with the pocket watch in my hand and realized revenge had never been about making someone suffer. It was about giving an honest man his name back. The greatest revenge isn't destroying the person who lied about your family. It's making the truth so powerful that their lies can never stand again.